Hello fellow collectors and welcome to Long's Toys. Today we are taking a look at the DX Kougouken Saikou and Seiken Saikou driver from Kamen Rider Saber. So yes, this is a new transformation device, but not for Saber himself, even though he is featured very prominently here on the packaging. This is actually for a new character that we got a couple episodes ago named Yuri, and he transforms into the Sword of Light, as you can see featured very prominently here. So he actually becomes the sword itself. You can kind of see a humanoid persona here with the head, the arms, the legs, and chest and everything in the sword itself, which is kind of neat. And he just kind of zooms around as the sword, and he transforms into other things later on, but we'll get there. And I do apologize, this came out around Christmas time, so it's at least 2 months late, 2.5 months late at this point. I apologize, I was waiting for it to ship from Japan, but finally have it now and very excited to take a look at it. So you can see here's kind of the driver form and the sword form, and then the Wonder Ride book here on the front, but very nice packaging, very fun, very colorful. Like I said, great picture of Saber here on the side. If we take a look at this side, you can see how the picture just kind of wraps around, and then it shows again the sword, the driver, the book, and then over here you get kind of a close-up of, again, all three forms there. And then on the bottom, not too much going on. It does have 5 watch batteries included, so you do not need any batteries for this. It comes with all the batteries that you will need. So just some more pictures here, and it's just showing how everything works. And he does have kind of a shadow body that can wield him when he's on his own, or he can have Saber wield him. And you can actually use the book with the sword driver. We'll take a look at that as well. So pretty cool stuff here. I'm going to go ahead and get everything out of the box, and we're going to take a closer look. So here's everything you get in the box. Okay, well that's not true. You do actually get a strap for the driver as well. But if you guys watch my reviews, you know I don't usually bother with the strap because I don't wear these things personally. So I just usually leave them in the box. But it does come with a strap. You just feed it through here, link it around, plug it into itself, and then there's kind of a plastic square that goes to cover that connection to keep it together. So that's, the only other thing in the box that I don't have here because I don't usually bother with it. Now, you might be looking at this driver piece and thinking to yourself, this looks really, really familiar. And you would be 100% correct, because here is the piece that comes with the Kougouken Kurayami for Caliber, and it is exactly the same piece, just done in a different color plastic with less paint, because he at least had the silver paint over here, and this is all just done in a gray, and then it has a kind of tan button there while he had the purple. There are no batteries in this piece whatsoever, so I guess technically, if for whatever reason you would lose this piece, you could use the one from Caliber as a backup. But it is exactly the same piece. So I'm going to put that off to the side for a moment, and we will take a closer look at the book in a moment. I just wanted to show off the sword piece here. So this is how it comes in the packaging. You just go ahead and pull the tab out here. The batteries are already installed. Here is your speaker. This button is a release when you put the book inside, so it doesn't really do anything on its own. You do have a button down here, which doesn't really do anything. It does actually make this little tab here pop up, which triggers something in the book, which we'll take a look at later. If you hit the trigger button, so you get kind of a standard like slashing sound. Nothing happens if you hold the button down. To deploy the blade, you're going to press this button down here. And you hear kind of a cool sound there. So you get the slashing sound. Sound when you close it up. Again, the slashing sound. So not too much on its own. It does have a kind of, the channel here to slide in, and that's because it's going to slide onto this. So, pull that off again. So it kind of starts playing some transformation jingle, and that's because it leads into what the book will do. But if we just go ahead and put this back on, so you hear that sound. So basically you're ready to go to begin the transformation, but first let's take a closer look at the book. So here is the Kin no Buki Gin no Buki Wonder Ride book. And you can see here it is meant for the third slot of the driver, so all the way to the right if you're looking at it, all the way to the left if you're wearing it. Not your typical Wonder Ride book. Definitely a little bit taller than usual. just to bring in Brave Dragon as a comparison. It's actually not as tall as I thought it was. It's definitely thinner. You can see there. So a little bit thinner, a little bit taller. Just kind of makes it look more stretched out than your average Wonder-Eyed book, but not as much as you'd think. But very sparkly. Got a nice translucent plastic here. There is a button on the top that will cycle through some sounds. Here is the silver book emblem on the back. Here's the QR code. You can actually see the batteries because it's all translucent. That's where you pull the tab out. Here's the speakers. So let's go ahead. Let's hit the button on the top. You can cycle through a couple phrases. So we're back around. Now you can actually open this. It's a little difficult because it obviously wants to open here, which it's going to do later on, but this has an open section like most DX books where you can open just the cover. You can see the side here, and then if we press this back, so it cycles through a couple phrases there as well when you have the cover open, and then I will attempt to close that back. Like I said, because this is such a more obvious pronounced hinge, it's a little difficult to get, you know, just this piece on that hinge to go around because they're both kind of on the same hinge. So you can do it, just takes a little bit of finesse. But yeah, we can go ahead and pop this open the same way we would a normal one by just kind of finding the piece right there, and you can see again. So sometimes this thing likes to have a mind of its own. Basically, because there's a piece back here that flips out later, and that connection is a little tenuous, it causes these things to kind of go off because there's something always shifting. But you can see... Alright. Stop it. I'm going to just hold it tight over here. So you can see the light, very shiny. You have that really fun like hollow foil sticker there, which I think looks pretty cool. And like I said, it's very prone to going off by moving this around. So it's the same as if I opened just the front cover, because it's, again, the same joint, so it's, you know, making it go nuts. But it looks pretty cool. I'm going to go ahead and close this back up, and we'll bring the sword in. Alright, so to get started, we're going to go ahead, open this up by pressing this down. Then we're going to take this and load it right in. Get some pretty fun standby music. And then we're just going to lift this out of this. So you can see as soon as you lift it out, it pretty much just flips open to do the transformation. You have the head, you have the arms, the torso, kind of see the legs going on down here. So I think it's kind of fun to have a person become a sword. Still have that same slashing sound, but you do have some sounds we can cycle through by pressing the button here on the side. I think that's the last one. I think it's going to loop back around. Oh, I was wrong. There was one last one. So there you go. Those are the sound effects for the sword. And again, you can just keep doing the slash. Now, the last thing I talked about where I said there was one more piece to flip around, that is meant to be this gets hit onto this, very similar to how Calibers works. But again, this doesn't really do anything, especially if you don't have a book in here. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit this with my finger so you can see it, what's going to happen in frame here. So like I said before, it's all on the same hinge, so that's the last piece to flip open. But I do think it's neat, and of course you have the LED there going off. Now, unfortunately, because they're all on the same hinge and because they're kind of heavy pieces, it makes it a little bit, not floppy, but just, you know, it can trigger sounds when you don't necessarily want to trigger the sounds. So it's just something to be a little aware of. But I do think it's fun, and I think there's a lot of playability here. So we'll go ahead and close that up. Now, when you want to take this book off, you have to hold this button down, but you also have to make sure that this doesn't get in the way, but this actually won't close all the way while it's connected. So you kind of have to like maybe move it about here. Then you can go ahead, release it, take this off, and then you can close it up. Because if you don't try to close the book at all, it'll get caught on these like pieces over here while you're trying to pull it off of the driver. So you have to close it at least partially. And then we'll put everything back on here. And we'll try out the book in the sword driver. Now, before we jump into the book in the driver, I did want to kind of point out, since this slides into here where a book would normally slide into, you would think that this could actually slide into the driver as well. And it kind of can. If you take the sword out, you can kind of get it to fit in these, but it's a really kind of tight fit, and you can tell that it's not really meant to happen, and it doesn't really do anything. It doesn't trigger any sounds or anything, but technically you can slide that in, but it really only works in the middle one. It kind of works in this one, but it feels like it's going to break something, so it's possible to do, but it's obviously not really meant to be done. But I just wanted to show that off in case people had questions if you could actually connect that in there. Technically, yes, but I wouldn't. Let's just say that. But we'll go ahead, we'll pop this in on its own. So you can see that none of those sound effects really come from the sword. It's all from the book. The sword just kind of does this light show, strobing through all the different colors. So just does that kind of transformation again there. You can see pressing on this is not really doing anything. And this should just cycle through the same sounds as if it was in its own sword driver. I do like the music though. You can see the lights are just still going crazy. So I think it's kind of funny there it just says giant story. So one last thing we're going to try, we're going to bring in Brave Dragon. So it seems like the transformation for that kind of just overwrites Brave Dragon. But it should do something for the attack, I think. So anytime you put the sword in and then pull it out, the transformation jingle from that book is going to override anything else. But if you leave the sword in and just hit the trigger twice, you can get the sound effect of the two books used for the attack. So that's kind of neat. I think this is a fun set. I mean, it's definitely a goofy concept when you have a person turn into a sword and then you have this elongated sword with a kind of person who just has a blade sticking out of his head. But I don't know. It's kind of fun. It's interesting to me because it reminds me very much of what they did with Saber for the King Arthur form, where he kind of turned into a sword in a very similar fashion. But I think this one works a little better. I think overall the design is just a little bit more cohesive. The blade works a little better. I like the LED. The sound effects are all fun. You get some phrases from Yuri as well, so I think that's a lot of fun. And like I said, there is going to be more compatibility later on when we get the comic book for his second transformation. So that's going to come into play with all this again a little bit later on. And yeah, I don't know. I think it's pretty fun. The Kin Nobuki, Gin Nobuki Wonder Ride book is kind of an odd shape. And unfortunately, like I said, because it all works on the same hinge and it wants you to do kind of three different openings, if that makes sense, open to three different pages in the book, I guess we'll say. It can make, when you open it mostly halfway, it can really set off the sound effects because that it's meant to just have the one little flap open, and when you add the weight to it, it just kind of sets it off and makes it go crazy. So I would assume most of the time you open it halfway, it's going to be in the sword driver, so that mitigates the problem. But if for some reason you wanted to open it up outside of the driver, you're going to have those sounds going off all the time, pretty much unstoppable, unless you kind of hold it from moving and actually like kind of clamp down on both sides so it doesn't have any room to kind of shift around. But again, that's a very minor problem. It's not even something really worth complaining, to be quite honest. I still think this is fun. It does have some compatibility with the sword driver as well, mostly just calling out that transformation jingle because it seems to overwrite everything else. So I would pretty much argue that like various combinations with different books, not really worth it. But if you do the double trigger transformation, or rather the double trigger attack sound, you'll get to hear both book names. But really, just the strobe light on that strobe light LED on that sword is pretty much all the sword contributes, and everything else is coming from the book itself. They did 100% just reuse the piece from the Ankoku Ken Kodayami, but it's not a problem. I don't think it's that big of a deal. I think, they had something that was already functional for what they wanted to do. They made it work. I don't think it's a problem. I mean, really, it's just a way for him to mount the sword on the belt buckle temporarily and then use it to transform. The rest of the time, either the sword's flying around on itself or by itself, or it's being wielded by somebody else. So I don't think it's a problem to reuse that piece because it's not even really necessary. It's really just used to trigger the transformation. The rest of the time, it's just kind of superfluous. So I think it's a cool set. I recommend checking it out. If you didn't pick this up yet, they do have a set now with the comic book. I think it's the Ex-Swordsman book, if I'm not mistaken. I'll have to go back and check the name of it to be specific. But if you didn't get this one on its own yet, they do offer a set with that. Or if you did already get this, they sell that book on its own. So either way, I think it's worth checking out. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. And as always, thanks so much for watching.